Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Alright. Looks like we're live. I'll tell the world. Streaming, game dev, probably doing more hologram stuff. Oh, that's not the right link. Because you can't cut and paste the link. You have to manually type it. Alright. I better check. Hold on. Test. Yeah, okay. Mic levels seem correct. Okay, so then we'll just go ahead and say the same thing over here. Exciting. I am super tired. It's actually a cold day, and for some reason my house thermostat is really on the fritz. So the temperature in here swings rapidly between roughly 90 and roughly 30 Fahrenheit. So pardon me if you can probably hear it in my voice. I only got about 3 hours of sleep, and not doing the best today, but it's okay. We're going to go ahead and do this for a while. So I was looking around. First off, this scene now takes like a year to load, so at some point we're going to have to start to actually chop these rooms up into rooms. But I was also looking around at some stuff to try and get myself some visual inspiration. And some of the things I wanted to do that I haven't done yet, I wanted to create ropes that have holographic glowy bits. And so I figured that's what we'd start with today. We'd go ahead and create some holographic glowy bits for our ropes. Now, the problem with that idea is that the ropes are made out of a 1 meter long tube that just gets distorted to map the individual points. I don't know if you can see that, but there are like really, really shadowy, lightweight balls. See these? Kind of just floating in and out of this, and if there's one in there too. So the question is, how do we put in holographic displays? Do we want them like as part of the rope? Well, that would be a little bit strange. Then we would have to have a holographic display every meter. It would make some more sense if we had a rope that swapped out every nth object for a secondary object. If we did that, we could split the rope into submeshes, and then we could have just like one of these plugs or something. But in order to do that, I'd have to reprogram how the rope works, and that would be a real pain in the ass, and I don't feel like doing that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create these custom rope handles, and we're going to do short segment ropes. So let's go ahead and do that now. The first thing we're going to want to do is actually create a holographic image element, and we're going to be doing it on this fat black rope here with this underlying rope below it. It's the heavyweight rope, right? So let's go ahead and open up that particular mesh file and create a mesh segment that is suitable for being in the middle of those. R is for ropes. There's no R for ropes. There's rocks. Is it cables? That's probably cables. Cables. All right. Let's hope this was done in a relatively reasonable version of Blender. Hooray. Not too shabby. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to track down the rope in question. It's this bad boy over here. And we're just going to move the rest of this shit out of the way, by which I mean we're going to isolate this, and I can't remember how to do that. Is it Control Space? No, Control Space hides the sidebar. There is a hotkey. I'll try and look it up. Blender, hotkey, solo. Shift H? I thought that was hide, not unhide. Oh, okay. Sounds good to me. All right, so the other thing we could have done is like put everything on a different layer and then moved layers around, or they're not layers anymore, collections. But I think that it's probably okay to do it like this. And you know what? I'm going to take a brief break to wipe my glasses off. They are covered in fuzz because I am dressed in full winter gear inside. And so that means I'm wearing like hats and ski jackets and scarves and shit. If I don't get the flu just because of this miserable weekend, I'll be shocked. Yeah, you don't get the flu from being cold, but if you're cold and don't get any sleep for 40 hours, then trust me, you're going to catch something. Your immune system is not going to be terribly happy with you. Anyway, we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to grab the original, move it away. This is going to be our footprint for creating our new holographic plugin. And basically what we want the holographic plugin to be is a vertical disc, a disc on top here. We're looking at this from the top right now. It doesn't actually run vertically, it runs along the ground like this. So I guess we'll flip it around just so we can see it from the same angle that we're going to see it in the scene. So basically what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make it so that when these things come in, there's going to be one coming in from here and one coming in from here, and they're going to be meeting in the center. We're going to want to give them a little bit of wiggle room. So basically we're going to be taking this footprint and just kind of expanding it. So let's grab the footprint. There we are. Duplicate it. And then what we're going to want to do is set this to individual origins and then just scale everything up. You can see the downside of this is that the big unit scales up much faster than the small units because it's proportional scaling. It's not something I can do anything about. That's the way Blender works. So something like this is more or less correct. And then what we're going to want to do is cut the overlapping elements like that. I think we can cut these bad boys too. You know, there's not any reason for us to even do it on both sides. Let's go ahead and just delete half of these. What the heck? Okay, are you wireframe now? Are you going to actually do what I click on? That would be super nice. I don't have the patience to fuck with you today. All right, so there we go. And what is it? It's, wow, I am so tired. I'm trying to figure out what the button I just did, the Z, that's what it is. So we don't need the rest of these. We only need these. So we're going to select these. Then we're going to invert our selection and just delete all of this shit. Goodbye. And we're going to turn this into a cross section. So what are we going to do with these points? Well, we can fill them in or we can smooth them out. I think we're going to smooth them out. So we're going to go ahead and... Why are there no quick favorites? Are quick favorites file specific? Because that's fucking stupid. Why would you ever want file-specific quick favorites? Alright, that should do. The only problem with this is that it looks shitty, but we can fix that after we see how it actually looks when we're done extruding. And we're just going to extrude it 1 meter because that's the length that we're dealing with. And it looks like it's correct, but we need to mirror it. So add in a mirror. There we go. Exciting stuff. So in order to create these edges, that's interesting. Why can I see it on one side and not the other? Not sure I like that. Okay, whatever. I'm way too tired to actually understand what the heck's going on here. So we're going to fill this in at some point, but I don't want to fill it in too early because the topology we've got running here is really ugly. It's kind of this pseudo Mickey Mouse shape that I don't really like. And I'm thinking that we're going to want to modify that before we do any of the fill. So if we were to just extrude and then delete this loop, we could soften up that edge, but I think we can actually just delete this whole element. That's not necessary to us at all. Yeah, like that. And then down here we can do the same thing. We don't need these. And this, we can actually bring this down even with this, which we can do by active element, and then there we go. So that is a nice round shape, much simpler than you might have thought it was going to be. And we'll just fill it in. Now, although I said we'll just fill it in, the truth is we need to have a little bit of some kind of marking here to kind of indicate where the pipe might go, because this is not going to be something that it's not going to be completely hidden. There's going to be like a pipe running into it, but the pipe won't fill the entirety of this space. So we're going to want to have some kind of lead that just kind of won't look incredibly bad if you can see a piece of it. So we're going to go ahead and just do it like that. And then we're going to cut it in half and delete this part, and then move the entire, no, stop that, there we are, half a meter, so GY 0.5. And then we're going to add in the z-axis mirror there. That should do it for the basic shape, but we need to have a indicator, a holographic indicator. And I can see that my tiredness has driven away the one person that showed up. Ha. But I don't want the holographic indicator to be in the middle. I want this to be directional. So we're going to go ahead and apply the mirror modifier. Boom. And then we're going to, oh right, they cleared all my quick saves for no reason. So we're going to go ahead and manually try and find this and then add it to our quick favorites so that this file will have it. Whatever, that's really stupid. And we're going to want to add in normals, auto smooth, there. That auto smooth is a little bit shaky. There, perfect. Nope, still a little bit shaky. Obviously we could bevel to bring that under control, but I don't want to. The other thing we can do is there is a trick you can use. So we're going to try the trick out and see whether or not it can work. The only problem with this trick is that it is going to screw up our topology, but that's okay. We'll figure that out too. So basically what we want to do is there's a line operator, you know what, it's not worth it. I'll just do it manually. There is a way to make this into a circular shape, but I don't feel like it. There, just undo it. So we're not going to worry about it. Instead, we're going to go ahead and put in a circular shape over here. And to do that, we are actually just going to add a circle. That's still centered? Yeah, so we don't need it to be high poly. 16 is... I guess 16 is about right, because it's the part that the player is going to actually notice and look at. So if we extrude and shrink, unfortunately we can't tell which direction this is pointing, because for some reason this is showing both sides in this file. There's no reason for it to ever do that. I never want that to happen. But Blender default is randomly choose whether or not to show both sides or not. So then you have to go and hunt through the thousands of settings to see which setting is malfunctioning today. Since we don't have a material, it may be that it shows up in here. There is a face orientation selection, which turns the whole thing blue. Ugly as shit, but at least we know it's now pointed the right way. So we'll go ahead and... backface culling is on. I call shenanigans. It's clearly not on. You are a liar. Where... I was just doing something. Was it over here? It was. Okay. I mean, maybe that's supposed to be transparent, but it looks pretty much like a shadowed material to me. Yeah, it's clearly not transparent. So Blender's just lying about it. That's fine. Ghost Time Games says that if we press N, it'll tell us to display the normal options. That was in an old version of Blender. N now opens and closes the sidebar. So there is an option to do that. I believe it's in here somewhere. I'm too tired to look it up. Either that or it's in here somewhere, but whatever. The whole point here is that Blender is still very hard to use and not terribly interested in getting along with its user base. I recently saw a top 100 Blender tips video where it was, started with 5 minutes of him begging people to follow him, and then it was just crammed full of tips he had picked up from other places, and they were all, I mean, I knew some of them, but they were all just like super hard to understand. Ghost Time Game says he's been using Ancient Blender. Yeah, the new Blender is easier to use than the old Blender, but if you're used to the old Blender, then you're going to be leaving behind all that muscle memory, so it's up to you which one you prefer. I do prefer the new Blender. I'm not going to say I like it, but I like it more than the old Blender. Anyway, this circle's a little bit big. Let's shrink it down a little. And then we're going to want to bring this individual origins, no, active element, and then pick an element and then scale Y. That didn't work. Scale Y 0. There we are. And what we're going to do is we are going to bevel and bring it out to here-ish. Ghost Time Game says he's going to upgrade, but not until a new project. That's not a bad idea. I did that, and unfortunately that meant that I upgraded to a early version of Blender 2.8, the beta version, and everything was all screwed up. The final release was much, much better, but now half my files are from the screwed up version of Blender, and they're still screwed up, like this one. And it's really not doing me any favors. Okay, I am honestly more tired than it even sounds like I am. I know that you can hear it in my voice, but I am failing to do virtually every basic interaction that that Blender allows. So it's really very impressive. I think I might have to stop streaming pretty soon, like maybe half an hour or so, because this is not going exceptionally well for my brain. So this is our holographic display panel. Let's bevel this edge a little bit, like that. And you can see how obviously we don't want the top to show through it, but we're not done setting it up yet, so we don't want it to get affected by our attempt to, oh, well, now I don't know which direction it was. There it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into wireframe, hit this, and then we're going to do Control-Alt-Shift-S. Nope. Control-Shift-S. Nope. Oh, it is Control-Alt-Shift-S, but we have to hit Y. There we are. It's one of those nice Blender tricks. All you have to do is remember to hit Control-Alt-Shift-S-Y, and you'll be able to do the same thing. It's better than rotating because it keeps it the same width. See, this is rotating, and this is Control-Alt-Shift-S-Y. So basically, we're going to bring that up to there, then we're going to unhide, and then we're going to grab the top. Oh, come on. Fuck you. There we are. And we're going to move it so that it's not really, really tight. Let's just see how this looks. So the issue here is that I really do think I need to drag down. Or maybe I can just shrink the whole thing. Let's try shrinking the whole thing. Maybe it's just that it's too large. I'm trying to think of a way to make this not look shit. And I'm not sure what sort of visual I'm going for, which makes it difficult. So if we were to try and select the point inside there, we're going to have to go back into wireframe mode, grab it, and grab the one on the other side here. Come out of wireframe mode, and then expand it. And if we expand it, you can see that we can sort of create like a saddle, which is not a bad idea. I think that that might be the way that we have to do this. The only question is what sort of decorations we're going to use, because we obviously don't want this to be... This looks really bad. This is like very primitive in terms of how it is being shown up here. So what we're going to do is we are going to just hide this for a moment and try and set up this saddle as something that doesn't suck quite so much. So if we bring this down like that, you can see that that's not going to end up working. But what we can do is we can select these faces. And we can inset them. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Ah, come on. This pixel. Thank you. We can inset them. Scale them down on the z-axis. Bring them in. And we can create ourselves like a saddle like this. And then when we unhide this, all we really have to do is adjust the edges until they make sense. So, at least in theory. I guess we'll do the sides separately. So what I just did is I hit GG, which is a loop slide, but unfortunately it randomly chooses which direction you're sliding. So some days it just doesn't do shit. Fortunately, in this case, I can just slide it using the y-axis, which does the same job in this one particular case. That didn't work. What did I do? It sounds like the heat turned back on in my house, so I have to turn my heat back off. I'll probably have to open a window. Alright, so now the problem here is these edges, where you can see that they go from being flat to being quite not flat, really, really sharp and suddenly. And that's because when we scaled it down on the z-axis, that part was more affected. And there are a lot of ways to fix this, but the number one way to fix it is actually to grab the top and slide it back like this. And this same over here. Because what we actually want is just for the vertical sight edge to be more or less the same. It's not quite right because they're not the same ratio. Well, whatever. Let's try it. Let's go ahead and grab this whole section, extrude it up. And then what we can try is to bevel the outside and bevel the inside. And then we can bevel the whole shebang and see how that feels. Nope, I don't like it. It looks like a shoe. So what we're going to do is we are going to delete everything and try again. Oh right, this doesn't have any of my favorites. So now I have to go hunt them down from the 10,000 random options. There we are. So, I don't know what I did. Turned on some sort of mode that I can't seem to turn off. Fuck you, fuck you. So as you can see, what I've done is I've turned on X-ray mode. How do you turn off X-ray mode? Alt-Z. Okay, well that might be handy. I'll try and remember that. I'm trying to think about ways to do this that might be a little bit more interesting. And how about I try just flipping this around the cursor, please. If we just have a mirrored shape, that might go pretty well. It also means that I could delete the underside entirely and then just bring these down and bring them in just a tiny, tiny touch. And then I could have maybe a smaller hologram, like a circle embedded here, because it's really the fact that the top is sloped that is a big part of the problem, right? So if I just create a flat element, then I should be able to create a scoop out of it, right? So we can try to do some fun stuff here. What if we take this whole thing and duplicate it, shrink it on everything but the y-axis? And then we can't flip it because flipping is a favorite and therefore no longer exists. We have to manually track it down. There it is. See how easy that was? Aren't you glad you deleted my favorite so I'd have to spend 20 minutes looking it up again? There we are. So if we create something like this, then we can add in some maybe decal work or something to make it feel like it's stapled on. I think that might be fun. Let's go ahead and delete half of this with Alt-Z, my new favorite link. Ghost Time Game says that he also spends most of his time swearing at Blender, or at his computer. Yeah. I almost never swear at people, mostly because I don't know of anybody who's really interested in getting in my face and aggressively being annoying. So, haven't had to swear at people in a long time. So here you can see that for some reason this got triangulated. I do not want it triangulated, so we're going to hit undo until we figure out what time I accidentally pressed the triangulation button. There it is. I don't know when that was and what I thought I was doing. Was it Control A? No? That just unselects. I don't know. At some point, I accidentally hit the magic combination of keys that made Blender think that I wanted to triangulate something, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So if we kind of mirror it like this, then what we can do is we can bring in the sides here. And we can start to make it so that it feels like it's stapled. And obviously that's going to require us editing some of these other loops to be a little more believable. I think I'm going to want to add a battery pack with the cable coming off of it. Let's try it. So to make it into a battery, what we're going to do is we're going to create a divot. That doesn't make any sense. I guess it's fine. I can just fix it up. There we are. And then this divot is going to have some kind of cable coming out of it. So there are lots of ways to create cables in Blender. One of the simpler ways is to simply duplicate the face you want, and then maybe we can bevel so that it's not square. Well, there's a subdivide option somewhere. Oh, look, this is Control-Alt-Shift-S. So if shortcut Shift Spacebar, really? No. It's not Shift Spacebar. Shift Spacebar is a shortcut for the entire side menu. Anyway, we don't need to annotate shit. We need to... Why is subdivide not one of the options? I mean, it's a pretty basic setup. There is a way to do it. I just have to go find which subdirectory. Well, that's what I must have hit. Alt-J? I never got anywhere near J. Control-T. I might have done that. So that's not a face argument. Maybe it's a mesh argument. Transform. Duplicate, extrude, split. Is there a split subdivide? No. Nope. So it doesn't appear that there's any... Oh, there it is. It's under edge, even though it's not an edge operation. That's fine. We can also say fuck you. There we are. So if we do this, then what we can do is we can simply grab these faces that we don't need and just dissolve them away. Boom. Oh, it didn't work. Boom. There we go. And then we're not going to need these inner elements, so we'll see if we can dissolve that face. We can't. There. Now, obviously, that is a face that is an n-gon. It's not going to be a great face for us in Unity, but that's not going to be too bad. We'll be able to fix it up. What I actually want to do is change this, because this shape is not precisely what I want. Ghost in Game says, does the W key not work anymore? It does not work. I think they replaced it with Control F12, something like that. So the issue we've got here is that this is... I spent all of that time trying to figure shit out, and I didn't do it the right way. So we're going to start over. What we're going to try and do is create the shape we want, because rotating it into place was going to be very annoying. So we'll do it this way instead. And we will rotate it once it is the correct shape. We'll rotate it to fit. And basically, what I wanted was a two-part mesh. So all we're going to have to do is nope. There we go. And then what we can do is we can bevel these faces on the inside like that. And that'll give it kind of an unusual, fun appearance. Alternately, we could bevel on the outside, but I think that this is okay. The only issue here is just that it's going to be a little hard to select, but that's okay. I don't care. So we're just going to rotate it until it's roughly the right angle. That's not going to matter too much once we get going. Yep, that should do. And then we're going to switch over to face select and grab these faces. These are n-gons, but they are concave, and it's not going to matter whether they're visible or not. But before we go any further, we're going to want to make sure that these are, in fact... Of course, it's not going to actually tell me. So is this... when I flip backface culling... Okay, so there is a difference. To my tired eyes, their version of backface culling looks an awful lot like just shadowed elements. But apparently it is a different visual. So these are facing the correct direction. And all we really have to do is have this cable go up. And I believe that it's control right click. There it is. Yay! So what we're going to want is to kind of just push it in. Oh, too far. Too far. Obviously, we can adjust the exact parameters in a minute. So basically, no one's going to look at it closely enough for it to actually be caught if it's a little bit off. But it needs to look like it's going up into this area. And that should be okay. All we're going to do now is grab these edges, shaboom, shaboom, and bevel them because those are the worst offenders. And then we're going to take this inner element. It wraps all the way around and goes inside, but we do not have continuity because we cut some of these faces. So what we're going to want to do is grab it in here like this. Thank you. And we're going to want to scale it up. And then we're going to want to switch over to faces. And we're going to want to extrude these straight through and then delete the interfaces. It doesn't really matter what it looks like in here, except for we don't need this edge because it's never going to be visible. We could probably... I just don't like how this is pointy. Ghost in the game says he's going to have to relearn Blender from basically scratch. Yep. Yeah, the actual functionality is all the same, but all of the hotkeys have changed. So, in fact, even how you select things has changed. So a little bit of muscle memory to try and remember. All right, so let's go ahead and mark it as smooth. You can see how, although we've marked it as smooth, we still have some creases. And that's just because our smooth angle is not quite high enough. There we go. That should do it. I think I want to go ahead and bevel a little bit more here. Stupidity. And we'll just grab this and go whoopity. And more or less. We've got some creases here that are in need of smoothing. That's not too shabby. All right. So now what we're going to want to do is put the hologram on here. The key here is that the hologram is actually going to be a Unity object hovering above this. It's going to be a separate thing. So all we really have to do is give the impression that there's something that can project a hologram. So to do that, what we're going to do is we are going to grab here, duplicate it. We're going to come over here. We're going to... Oh, clipping isn't on. Okay, well, clipping not being on means that we now have a bunch of faces that I didn't think we had. Just go ahead and check and make sure. Okay, it looks like clipping was on most of the time because we don't have any serious problems with our topology except right there. Not sure what happened. Turned clipping off, and at some point it went a little bit off the wall. So let's turn clipping back on and just bring that back. And then we do not need that face. There. Here we have a wedge, and basically we're going to want this wedge to be a holographic projector, and we're going to have one on each side. So if we extrude it up like this, and then we can just Control-Alt-Shift-S and then Y it, we can sort of tilt it so that it appears that it's going to be projecting in a specific direction instead of flat. See? No problem. But we're going to want to make it look a little bit cute. We don't want it to look too obviously like an extruded polygon. So we're just going to add in a little bit of shaping so that it's not quite so obviously, you know, a quad. So if we were to see, they've got these new options. We've got extrude, but we've also got inset. I know that inset is different from extrude in theory, but it looks an awful lot like just extrude with shrink instead of extrude along normal. Oh, there's bevel. But either way, it's fine. That should do. All right, so now we have this cable that has some fun elements to it, right? It's not too shabby. And this will be our cable connector. If we unhide everything, let's just see if we can move this out to the side a little bit. This is called pipe section C. We also have a pipe section C mount, and this is going to be a pipe section C something else. Connector? We'll call it a connector. So we have a lot of problems with this mesh in that it is not actually it's not actually set up to have a UV map. So we're going to have to UV map it. We're just going to smart project it and pretend like that's okay. Then we'll save. What's this? This is inset all the faces on the entire mesh. Okay, that's interesting. We don't want that. All right. So back over here. So we have a cable right here, but it's pretty big. I guess there's not really any huge deal with I guess we can probably duplicate it, but we actually have prefabs that we can use. So here's rope C, which is the one we're using, and we can just drag it in, and you can see that it is a shorter length that's easier to handle. So if we take a look at this rope C, we're going to have to unpack it because otherwise we won't be able to add shit to it, the new prefab system and all. We're going to want to do a desync on it just to make sure that it's not screwing up any other ropes. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add in some handles that have that object as their handles. So if we wanted to add in a handle, all we have to do is let's create a collision handle. Is there like create a normal handle? It looks like I never thought I would need to create normal handles like in any sort of great amount, so there's no particular setup for that. Instead, it's just going to allow us to create collision handles. So we're going to go ahead and collide with something. Boom. Ghost Time Game says, I haven't touched the new prefab system either, still running on 217. I'll be right back. Give me a second to adjust this heat. Well, you're in for a fun ride. Not only has the prefab system changed, but the rendering pipeline has changed. Fun. Boom, boom. There we go. So we just created a handle in the middle, and if we take a look at what that handle is, it's right here. And it can be adjusted separately from the rest of the rope, like this. There's something a little screwy going on, because for some reason the rope is insisting on going over there. Well, that's weird. What's it doing? It's going over to the stop and then coming back? That sounds like a glitch. Yeah, so you can see how the handle actually ended up as element 3 when it needed to be element 2. Can I move that down? No, I can't move it down. For fuck's sake. Oh, I know why that happened. Boy, that's dumb, though. There we are. So we got this handle, and what we're going to need to make this handle actually work is to add a new mesh filter. Actually, let's go ahead and... yeah, it should be fine. Mesh filter. And we're going to want the mesh renderer to have a mesh filter. I don't know why I didn't automatically add the mesh filter, but whatever. Which is going to be a rope C or pipe C or cable C. Cable C. It is called pipe C. I just spelled it wrong. There we are. So this is a pipe C connector. Boom. Like that. We're going to need to just go ahead and grab a material for that pipe C connector. We can use anything we want. So let's go ahead and grab it from the rope display. Cable pitch black. And the handle, it'll need to have extensions if it's going to work at all. You can see how it, that wasn't what I wanted to do. First off, it's facing the wrong way. Maybe we do need to have that be a sub-object. So let's go ahead and just duplicate this handle. Call this handle visual. Or visual, whatever works. Put it inside the handle. In the handle, remove the mesh renderer. Remove the pipe section. Over here, remove the rope handle. There we go. And then we can adjust the visual. I think scaling up a little bit might be a good idea. But you can see how even when we scale it up, there's this issue where the rope sags all the way through it. It's not a situation where the rope is being well behaved at all. That'll probably be less of an issue if it's on a flat surface. So let's try that out. Well, it is less of an issue, but it has this bunching going on. I don't want to have to think about it too much. We'll have to try and figure out what we want to do about it. But for now, let's go ahead and change that material. It's a little bit too... The variable guide of rope has not been assigned. What the fuck are you talking about? That must be an old error from when I was creating it. Sorry. I duplicated the handle, and the handles weren't really intended to be duplicated like that. Anyway, the handle visual that we're running with here is a really terrible setup because I can't see it. So I'm just going to kind of just randomly try some stuff. To be honest, that's not necessarily a bad look. Obviously, it's temporary. There's a lot of disconnects that don't make any sense. Let's go back over into here and grab this element. And we're going to go ahead and extrude that element, or rather unwrap that element separately because it was disconnected in a really obvious spot, which didn't really make a lot of sense. So now when you come back over here, that's going to be a different setup. But still cut in the middle. Why is it being cut in the middle? We're just going to unwrap it like that. Well, at least it's no longer going to be cut in the middle. Unfortunately, it's really ugly and stupid. I don't know whether or not we want to use two different materials or whether we want to create a material that doesn't suck so much. Let's go ahead and just arrange some of these UV elements to be a little bit more ready for us to actually use them in the game engine, and that means adding in some cut marks. So I think that cutting here would be a good idea. And we're going to go ahead and delete the faces on them because the faces are causing us grief, and you know, we don't need grief at the moment. I am too brain dead, so we don't need those. That should really clean these things up. Let's see if it'll give us strips. No, you ass. Fine, we'll give it a flat unwrap. There we are. So that'll give us just cables that can be separated from the rest of the mesh. So if we wanted to, we could assign the cables to be like the right-hand quarter or eighth. There we are. So now those cables are going to be over there. And what we'll do is we'll grab and drag everything else away from there. So if we grab everything else, we can just simply Control-I to invert it. And then we actually want to undo that. And we want to unwrap everything except these. We're going to want to just change this a little bit. These guys need to be beveled so they're no longer sharp edges. Oh, okay. Now we're going to want to do that. We're just going to check and see how many pieces they broke this obvious flat surface into. Okay, so we're going to have to unwrap some of these. Okay. I guess we don't need to worry about that part. What? What happened? Apparently I turned on backface culling somehow. Or turned off backface culling somehow. I just, like, accidentally lost my finger on a keyboard and suddenly backface culling turned itself off. Why is it so hard to find? And then you just randomly accidentally screw it up forever and you can't figure out how to put it back, and it's now using the other... There's backface culling. So apparently I turned backface culling off in 2 of 3 modes by accidentally hitting my thumb on the keyboard. I don't know how to fix it, so fuck it. Alright, so I can also just mark these. And here. By God, Ghost Time game. If you come by again some other week, you might see me in slightly better condition. I'm certainly not in great condition today. Is that a face? No, okay. As long as it's not a face. So, grab these, invert, and unwrap everything else. Doop. And then we can just grab everything and shrink it on the x-axis so that it's not overlapping. There. And there's lots of other stuff we can do. Like up here, these guys, we can go ahead and put them in the same spot so that they will have the same... Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. There. So we're going to have maybe the cables will glow, and that will be kind of neat. Let's try it. All right, so we don't actually have it set up at the moment. The material we're using doesn't make any sense. But if we take a look at the materials in question, you can see how the color stripes are across the top rather than on the right. So I put them in the wrong spot. That's not a big deal. We can just select everything and then rotate it 90 degrees like that. So now it should work, but it didn't. What's up? Is the colored band... Oh, the colored band vert was in the right spot. Except I think what's actually going on here is these need to be further to the left, because we're just kind of using an existing piece and it's not great. So if we take this and duplicate it and use vert instead, and then drop it in, well, that's actually very interesting. It's not precisely what I want, but it's kind of fun. So we'll go ahead and darken it down a little bit. There we go. And we can adjust it later, no big deal. But we're going to want to make our handle visual include a holographic projector. So to do that, we'll just go ahead and duplicate our existing holographic projector. And drop it into our visual. Sploomy. And then splash, splash, blow. Splash, splash, blow. Splash, splash, blow. Obviously, we can't use it as is because it's not quite right. But it's going to be pretty close. Okay, so if we do it like that, yeah, that's going to be... Let's see how it looks. That took a lot of effort, mostly because I'm brain dead. Oh, we're in the wrong room. All right, so I don't feel like swimming all the way back out here. Let's just grab the player and drag them. So the idea is that this will grab the player's attention as they're moving along, and it will have directionality, as in the player will understand that, that they should be moving in a specific direction along these indicators. But you can see that these indicators actually flicker out of existence when we zoom out very far. So if the player is not directly along this, they're not going to be able to see these holograms. And the reason for that is simply because the holograms are really, really thin. So we're going to need some thicker hologram images. I'm going to have to switch you over to Phoenix Wright while I set up my art program for this nonsense. Did I call it circ part? I did. So we're going to go ahead and duplicate that. And then save it as circ part 02. We'll bring you back. Bloom. So this is what it looks like, and you can see how it's just a very, very tiny portion of the bottom of this image. What we're going to need to do is have it fill considerably more of the image. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and use much thicker lines. But I think that we can How big is this? It's actually quite big. I don't think we need this full size. We're going to bring it down. And that'll make using... we won't have to use giant thick lines. We'll just use a really small image. So in order to create the image we want, we got two options. We can either draw it, or we can line it, or we can cut it. So that's three options. I lied. And basically, we're going to go ahead and start with a big fat line like this. And then we're just going to kind of mess with it. So I think that one of the things that we're going to do, we're going to try and keep our modifications straight. Because if they're curved, then what happens is the system will get a little bit confused about what it's trying to show. Whereas if they're straight, it should be okay. So what we're going to do is create some insets. We'll just duplicate, create another inset. There we are. And then we will grab this entire set, duplicate it, and move it up over here. And this is like a super, super basic setup, right? The only thing we're going to need in addition to that is just a dot. Boop. No! Boop. There we are. I love how these dots are not even close to being circular. Maybe we'll go ahead and use like a shape tool or any ellipse. That's not the right spot. My guess is that it's going to be just as uncircular. Yeah. You can't really get very circular at this scale, I'm afraid. So we're going to go ahead and duplicate just the dot. Move it. There we go. So now we've got this, and this is going to be our foundation. We're going to want it to be additive, like this. And then we're going to want to lock the pixels, lock the opacity, and paint it red. Yay! Then we can duplicate it. And we'll go ahead and flip this layer. Jabloom. And that one we're going to paint greens. Yay! And then we're going to duplicate the original one more time here. We're going to paint that all blue. But obviously we have to transform it a little bit, so we're going to flip it on another axis. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and actually move it as well. There we are. So now what we have is a circ part 02 that has 3 different colors. And we can use it on our new super small visuals. So if we come down here, these are the visuals as they were. You can see just how thin and lacy they are, which isn't going to work. So if we come down here and we select the material, we can go ahead and we actually have 2 of these, holographic particle 2. I'm going to rename them holographic warning A, and this is going to be holographic warning B. And to duplicate this one, it's going to be called holographic micro warning. And we don't need it to be red and yellow. It can just be one. No. That actually is an interesting idea. I didn't think of that. That might be really interesting. Let's go ahead and try it. But first we got to assign the correct values to it. I accidentally dropped it onto the mesh rather than onto the holographic warning, which is not a terrible idea. It's going to be interesting. That's probably the better way to do it now that I'm not being completely brain dead. I'm probably still being completely brain dead. Either way, let's use our new texture. So let's just see how that looks. The texture might be a little bit too fat, but we'll know for sure in a minute here. Now that's actually really interesting. It's not at all the shape I want, but that's a really good idea. Oh my god, why didn't I think of that an hour ago? Oh well. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to have it be alongside instead of floating above. And we won't even explain what's projecting it. Easy, right? So let's go ahead and see if we can set that up. Only problem we've got is that it turns out that this is a little bit too fat. It takes up a little bit too much of the space. So what we're going to do is we are going to unlock all of these, and then we are going to try to do a correct line width and see what happens when we do that. So we'll hide two of them and just see it with one of them. Interesting. It might actually be easier just to cut it. We are going to have to move them. They do have to be close to the bottom in order for this to work right. Later on, I'll probably create another version of this that's not quite so... Seriously? Why is it still so... fat? Well, let's go ahead and see how it looks on the circular FX. So if we just hide this for now. Let's delete the inner circle. We only need one. And I don't need it to be red. I need it to be orange. There we are. Let's see how well this circle is visible. Let's see if we can actually see the circle, and then we'll refine it into a shape. Okay, so that's visible from quite a ways away, and that's kind of the point. But you can see that what we've got is, it looks more like a sun because it's so fat. So our fat holograms are simply too fat. But if we were to simply get rid of one of the colors, I bet it would work great. So let's go ahead and get rid of blue. Because all three of them count as completely opaque all the time. Yeah, so here you can see it's starting to really crawl. Maybe it would look best with only one color. Let's find out. So I think that maybe the issue is simply it's too straight of a line. I might have to be a little bit more aggressive about making the lines go up and down or be broken up in other ways. Yeah, so even with just one, you can see how it's still very much like an unbroken gear shape. So what we've got to do is try a different shape because these shapes are crap. So deleted, and we're going to go ahead and just try again. So this time we're not going to go quite as thick as we did the first time in terms of the the size of the line itself, and we're going to be able to offset it by more than its own height. That's apparently quite a prerequisite. I haven't ever done this before, so you learn new things every day. So we'll do that, right? Yeah. And we're going to want to be able to connect these elements up. And I think since we're using such a pixelated visual, we'll go ahead and just do it manually, pixel by pixel like this. I think the one on the right is better. The one on the left is too thick. Bloop. Good, duplicate, and bloop. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to cut chunks. So if we wanted to cut repeated chunks out of this, what would be the best way to do it, do you think? Well, it's very hard to line up chunks properly, so the best way to do it is actually to choose some black, and then put the black on top, and then bring the black down. And that'll cut it out. Since we're going to be doing an additive situation, we don't need to worry about having black, because black will be fine. So what we're going to do is we're literally just going to pulse it away. And since we're working with a fairly low, low res system, we should be able to do it manually. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut here and add in some dots. Vaguely correct. Then we're going to crush it all down, set it as additive. Okay, so unfortunately for us, the black lanes are going to be an issue. So we're going to have to do it the other way, which is not terrible. What we can do is just select them. We should be able to do a precise select. This is the only one that's going to bite us. We'll have to redo that part, I think. Anyway, we can just then hit delete. This, unfortunately, will need to be replaced. It's not going to work. But fortunately, we have an exact duplicate right next door. Boom, like so. We're going to go ahead and try it with just red first. We'll come back in and add more layers if the red looks a little sparse. Maybe if I adjust some of these values, it'll feel a little bit better. So you can see we've got these tilings set up. We've got a Y and X tiling here. If we change these values, we get radically different visuals. But if the X and Y tilings are set to some reasonable values, we can't see it from very far away because it squashes down and the pixels end up just not counting. But we do want it to feel a little bit like this. I think 0.1 was too low. And the Y value will shrink it away from the center. So having a Y value of 1 is probably fine. Let's see here. So you can see how it kind of crawls like that. That's not necessarily bad as long as it is not the only color. If it's the only color, it feels a little bit strange. So let's go ahead and add in another color. Just, what's this guy? Flatten that down. Duplicate, lock, paint it as green. We're just going to flip it. And we're going to move it like that. Oh, no, like that. And we're just going to see how that looks. All right, so now that we've got a red and a green, it shouldn't be so obviously one piece, because now we're going to have two pieces that are moving at different speeds. The only question is whether or not it's... Oops, that didn't work. The only question is whether or not it's going to be too obviously like just a beam. No, I think that's going to be fine. Look at that. It's a little bit silly, a little bit strange. One of the problems may simply be that we should be using a less complicated mesh. So let's go ahead and build a simpler mesh for it. This is like a 12-way split, and it doesn't need to be anywhere near that complicated. The repetitions are a problem. So let's go over into meshes. We should have an FX new. Grind, grind, grind. Grind, grind, grind. And these are them, and you can see that they are quite complicated, and we don't need them to be anywhere near that complicated. So we're going to go ahead and delete that one. It's just a duplicate. What the heck is this one? Ortho UV? We don't need that one. We'll just delete it. What we need is to create a new setup that only mirrors it 4 times instead of 1,000,000. There's a plugin that would be super helpful here that isn't turned on at the moment, because I can't remember how to turn on plugins. It's like properties, isn't it? Preferences? There it is. I believe that it's called like line tools, curve tools, no, modifier tools, loop tools. There it is. Doof. And then we're going to want to save that change because I want that on forever. Oh, right. There is no way to save the change. Whatever happened to being able to save this? Is it permanently saved? Well, whatever. I can turn it on again later. When I'm more awake, I'll have more of an idea as to what we're doing. So here you can see that the quad is shaped like this. And that's just fine for our needs. The only thing is we're going to want to have a set of quads that are aligned around a center. So we're just going to go ahead and force that to be the case. There we go. And all we really need to do is, first off, we're going to want to delete the shared pieces. Boom. And then we're going to want to merge these together. So, unfortunately for us... Oh, wait, no. What happened to my fucking quick favorites? I installed a new version of Blender, and it apparently no longer has quick favorites. This is really obnoxious. So add to quick favorites, add to quick favorites. No, wait, add to quick favorites. I really wish that Blender was nicer. So this is a simple square, and all we need to do is extend it. And if we take a look, these all overlap. What we actually need to do is have half of them backwards. Scale x -1. That way it'll go up, down, around in this square, which should be fine, but it's going to be very square if we leave it as is. So at this stage, what we can do is we can... Oh, it's way too big. Let's shrink the whole thing. We can come over here into modifiers. There we are, subdivision surface. If we do a subdivision surface using a Catmull-Clark, we'll get a very round shape, as you can see. We may not even need the loop tools, since Catmull-Clark naturally loops it. So I guess that'll probably be okay. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. We called this FX Circular UV. We're going to call this FX Circular UV Small. Come back over here into Project, and switch out our mesh. That ain't bad at all. That's pretty much how I want it to be, aside from the fact that it's rotated 45 degrees. What's this? That's the tools. I don't need those anymore. So it's rotated 45 degrees. We're going to go ahead and unrotate it so that it's not... There, that's better. So what we're going to try and do is maybe just see how this feels when it's aligned on the rope, just without any other sort of indicators at all. Just, hey, look, there's something on the rope. And if we create a couple of these, we should be able to have them just kind of arbitrarily stacked in this line like so. And that might work. Now they're all going to be perfectly synced, which is what I want in this case, so it should be fine. I don't think it works for this rope, because this rope has those doohickeys at the bottom. Oh boy, that actually looks really nice other than that, though, doesn't it? Hey, look, you want to follow this? Let's make it something other than orange. Let's try blue. A really, really vivid blue. Then I'm going to take some GIF sort of thing and call it a day, because it took me an hour and a half to put 3 rings around a cable. So I really don't think that that's the right layout. Let's go ahead and try this again. What we're going to do is delete 2 of these, bring this back, unrotate it. And instead of having it be rotated like that, what happens if we just levitate it so that it's partly inside like this? And I can just duplicate it, pull it out, 0.2, pull it out, 0.2, and then if I were to grab all of these and rotate them after the fact, like that. Doesn't feel right. Let's unrotate it, and then what we'll do is we'll take these 2. Oh, I want them there, there. And we will move them off to the side and shrink them. 0.5. 0.5. Come on. Stupid. No, that is incorrect. There. Yeah, that might be okay. Something like this is kind of what I have in mind. I can actually just put these wherever I want. They don't have to be on handles. The only thing is if they're on handles, they'll automatically be centered on the rope no matter what happens. Whereas if I just kind of place them, then if the rope moves, they won't follow along. Still, this is a very lightweight setup. And I think I'll take a GIF of it and post a GIF. But that's going to happen off screen. There's no reason for you to watch me struggle with the GIF maker, especially since I think I might have accidentally uninstalled it, or at least accidentally dragged it off the start menu. I'm really tired. See you around, everybody. Have a good one.